Aikyo Max.
You're listening to the Pool Boy World Championships podcast.
So Great Britain had 2 medals at halfway during the World Championships in Fukuoka when we recorded our halfway report, but it's been an avalanche of medals over the second half of the competition, with 6 added to leave the team with 8 medals as they come home from Japan. This is the Pool Boy podcast. Steve here, Bob and Katie are with me. We're going to take a look back over the second half of the meet over there in Fukuoka and pick up some of the other things that happened, particularly from the British team, of course. And Katie, the second half of the meet, well, it was 3 times better than the first half for GB. It was really, really great, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm so pleased to have been proven to be such a pessimist with our medal target. Completely blown me away with that total. I think I thought it was going to be tough without having our, fairly safe PT day 2 gold, which we've come to rely on, for the last few big meets. But, what a great team. They've just built the momentum and got better and better as the meet's gone on.
And Bob, it was, say, six medals. You were the most optimistic of us beforehand with your estimate 7, so you are proven right.
Well, I wasn't so optimistic at halfway, though, to be honest. But the second half of the week, obviously with the 4x2, a few narrow misses as well with Matt Richards in the 100. It could have been so much better. The men's medley relay today weren't too far away either. So quite a few near misses as well. It could have easily been up in double figures. But I just thought overall the PBs that were put down during the week, the standard for most of the swimmers that we put on the team this time around was exceptional and really looks great for 51 weeks' time.
Well, it was a very encouraging second half. Let's start with that 4x2 since you mentioned it there. Obviously, the guys were the raging favourites heading into that race. They're the Olympic champions. First time we've seen that quartet back together again, and indeed they swam in exactly the reverse order that they swam in Tokyo, which was a nice little touch. But you've still got to do it, Katie, haven't you? People can say you're going to win, but you've still got to get out there and perform. And the US gave them a real run for their money. Yeah,
it was quite a lot closer than it had been built up to be. I don't know quite what I thought was going to happen. I think I felt a little bit of caution after last year. When on paper again, I think we were the favourites in a lot of people's eyes. But it was great to see, I think it must have weighed quite heavily on them all, the expectation of that, particularly after the disappointing disqualification in the 4x1. And I think for them to put it together and perform, when that pressure was on, is a really, really good sign going into Paris. I think was just so lucky with having that depth in the men's 200 free, and there's not a dodgy leg of that relay. You feel safe with all of them, and there are options as well. So absolutely brilliant. I would have liked us to have got that world record and perhaps been a little bit further ahead of the US, but I'm sure the boys would have done too. So let's do that next year, please.
And raging favourites anyway. We've talked about the order all the time, but Bob, we do feel very comfortable with Tom on an anchor leg nowadays, don't we?
Yeah, we do. But I think you could put any one of that quartet out there. Duncan feels comfortable doing it. Tom feels comfortable doing it. Sort of Jimmy would. And I'm sure Matt most definitely would. So I think we've got so many options. That's the thing. I think your lead off is whoever you choose and your back end whoever you choose. And great thing is it is now a team unit. You get that impression. It's actually quite difficult for anybody outside to break into that top 4 now. But it is a team unit, and it's very much D'Artagnan to offer 1-1 for all, and they do it.
Katie, we unfortunately lost Jack McMillan, who pulled out for personal reasons, which meant that 3 of them who swam the final had to swim the heats as well. Do you think that may have been a factor? I mean, they'd all had busy weeks anyway. Duncan perhaps quieter than he would normally have, but everyone's got a lot of races in the arms and the legs. So, do you reckon one of them having a day off, maybe Matt having the morning off, might have made a difference in terms of the world record? I mean,
I think maybe. I think Matt was a very busy guy throughout the week, so I think any extra time off that he could have had would have been great. I didn't think that Duncan looked quite his normal self in that relay. I mean, obviously they still did brilliantly. They still got the gold, but I just didn't think he looked quite his normal self. There wasn't quite the normal race from him, and I couldn't tell you what that was. I have no idea if there's anything going on. I might be imagining things, but to me, he actually looked quite tired, and hadn't had the workload that we've seen him have before. So I would hope that perhaps that program will be managed next, or he'll feel better, or whatever was going on this week won't be going on when they come to it next year, because I wouldn't doubt that he'd be in that quartet. I know Matt was a little way off what he went in the individual, but it was still a fantastic, I didn't look at it and think, that's a bit of a rubbish relay swim. I think they just looked a bit nervous. I think they really, really wanted that gold, and particularly after the 4x1.
I just wonder, Steve, if two of our bankers were under-raced during the course of the week, Duncan being a case in point, and that was his choice to a certain extent, and Jimmy Guy. I talked to Jimmy on the Monday. We didn't actually see him in the pool for 4 days, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe they could have done with a bit more time in the pool. But, the team are managing the workload in the way they see fit. Obviously, they won the gold. So, we can't sit here and be critical, really, of the outcome of that race, because, that's what you go there for. You go there to win the gold. They've secured their place for the Olympics as a consequence. We obviously all want them to swim a bit faster. We would have loved them to get that world record, but they'll just have to go and do it in Paris now.
But Jimmy didn't make the final of the 100 fly, and I think under normal circumstances he would have done.
I agree that he did look a little bit off his very best. So maybe that was a function of his programme through the meet. But, and of course he didn't get the spot in the medley relay, and we'll come back to that in a moment, I'm sure. But while we're talking about the freestyle boys, we were kind of looking forward to the 100 freestyle final on our halfway episode. At that point, Matt had qualified fastest. He was swimming the lights out in the sprint freestyle bob this week. I mean, he set another British record in that final and just narrowly missed out. I mean, it was a blanket finish across, huge parts of that field in that race. But, he's put down another best time in the final. You've got to give him credit for that.
Well, if you do 3 British records in 3 races, you cannot ask for any more than that, can you? 3 PBs, 3 British records within a smidgen of getting a medal. You can't ask for more than that. I'm sure he is disappointed. He will be disappointed by not getting a medal. But quite frankly, if you can break the British record on 3 occasions over 2 days, that takes some doing.
I think if you told him at the start of the week that he would have that finish in the 100 freestyle, he'd have bitten your arm off, regardless of what it meant in the 200. So to come away with that and be world champion in the 200 and be world champion in the men's 4x200, it's what an incredible week.
He has had an absolutely fantastic week. Yeah, so well done, Matt Richards. 2 of the other members of that relay team, they kicked off the medal-winning exploits during the second half of the week. That was Tom and Duncan in the 200 IM. They came through with silver and bronze. I'll be honest, I didn't think that we would get 2 medals in that. I thought one of them could get a medal. I didn't like to think. I thought probably Duncan would be the more likely, but they both swam that race beautifully from a tactical point of view. I mean, Léon Marchand was always likely to win it, but they paced their races so well. I mean, you could argue that Tom paced his in a slightly eccentric manner, but they knew what their strengths were, and they were able to put the race down and swim just what was around them, Bob. And
Tom Dean's last 50 was unbelievable. What was it?
27.12 Tom came back in. No one else was under 28 seconds.
No, I mean, and I said to him, we had a little joke on social media, I said, are you selling that rocket fuel? Because when he came off the turn, he just flew, and it's like everybody else was swimming in quicksand, because he was just flying through that. And you're right, it was he probably wouldn't use the word eccentric, but it was. I'm looking at him going, there's no way you're going to catch them up. He came off that turn and just went like the clappers, and ridiculous. absolutely ridiculous last 50, and just shows what he can do, and that he is an exceptional talent in that respect. Obviously, he's a big boy, he moves quickly, but the fact is we've got an exceptional swimmer.
I think I'd been naive enough to think that the 200 AM was kind of an extra event for him, and I hadn't, I hadn't appreciated how good he is at it, and just seeing him on that podium, I expect it in freestyle now, but I hadn't put him in that bracket yet, so I think it's another thing that just makes me really, really excited for next year. And I think I'd also forgotten that it was possible for us to have two people on a podium, even though we'd seen it earlier in the week.
Yeah, to do it twice. I mean, and Duncan, fair play to him, he cracked 156 again, 155.95. He was in the race much more all the way through, but again, it was all about the back half, wasn't it? Because both him and Tom had really quick breaststroke splits and came back very fast on the freestyle. They were the two fastest in the race on the freestyle leg between them. So really about pacing and knowing where your strengths are for both of them, but really, really professional performances and a great result for the pair of them. Let's move on. We can talk about more medals for the freestyle guys, because we picked up a bronze medal in the mixed freestyle relay, the mixed 4x1. That's not a relay that Britain traditionally swims. We've swum at European level. I can't actually think that we've ever swum it at world level, or certainly have only swum it maybe once. But I would speculated that they should be in the medal conversation a few weeks ago, and just looking at some splits and things, but they pulled it off, and actually it was a pretty comfortable third place, Katie.
Yeah, it was a comfortable third place, and I think it could be, if everyone swam their best splits, we'd have been pretty firmly in second, I think, which is absolutely not anything that I ever thought we'd be saying. Obviously Australia completely dominated, as they did for much of the week, but it was really, really great. I mean, it's a weird relay, isn't it? It's not my favourite one. It doesn't, I don't find that the mixed 4x1 brings what I like, what you get out of the mixed medley relay. Everyone just goes male, male, female, female, and it's not that exciting, but a medal's a medal. It's great. And it's good to see. I mean, there are so many countries that are so strong on 100 freestyle. So for us to have, four of the strongest in the world is really, really great. But I just think we had a little bit more to give on that one.
There's definitely potential in that quartet. Yeah, we were much closer to the US than I would have expected at the end. So I mean, that's a credit to the swimmers who were in that team. But yeah, Bob, it's not as exciting, a concept as the medley relay, because of the fact that it is just that fixed order.
No, there isn't that jeopardy, is there, that there is in the mixed medley, when you've got, obviously the breaststroke is a very key part, and everybody, interesting this time around, used their men on the breaststroke. So that's starting to... It was an imprecise and a kind of new science for a while, but now people are going, right, we need to get a man on the breaststroke. So that doesn't seem to change now. Everybody's doing man on the breaststroke, all the top nations anyway. So whereas that used to be, I think the Americans have learned their lesson maybe from Tokyo with that.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Although there was a time, obviously, as you say, when it started, I think I'm pretty sure they won a world title with Lily King on the breaststroke leg. But yeah, it's very much the men's swimming breaststroke, isn't it, in that mixed medley, and then fitting everyone around it, unlike the mixed free, as Katie says, always man, woman, woman. But great result there for that quartet. Let's move on to the 50 freestyle, because that was notable for all sorts of reasons. We've got a very creditable bronze medal for Ben Proud. He was only 100th of a second behind silver. But the real story there is the margin of victory from silver to first, which was half a second, Katie, which is just a ludicrous winning margin for Cameron McAvoy, 21.06.
Yeah, he sort of semi-retired, didn't he? I don't know if he actually retired, but he certainly hasn't been on the international scene for a couple of years, just completing his astrophysics degree or something insane like that. But he's reinvented himself as a 50 freestyler, having been a 100 freestyler before, and I mean, it's insane. So I don't think the Ben that we have this year is quite the Ben we had last year. He just looks in a slightly different place, and hopefully he'll be back to 2022 Ben for 2024. But even if he had done his very best 50 free, that still would have been a pretty dominant performance from McAvoy. It was just, another level. It's crazy to see a margin of victory like that over a 50.
But how consistent has Ben Proud been over a decade? Think how many medals he's picked up at major championships over the years.
He's been excellent, hasn't he, for a very long time, and he seemed happy with that bronze, which is great. He knows where he is in his preparation, whether it was good, bad, indifferent, or whatever. But he also now knows what it is he has to do to be competitive in Paris. He said it himself in the interview afterwards. Dressel's back in the pool, so we would expect him to be back in there. McAvoy's just set a new standard for that event heading into Paris, so it's going to be ultra competitive next year. But he knows what to do.
I wonder how difficult it is, though. I wonder how difficult it is when you go to a major event, knowing you only have one event. You're not going to be involved in relays. You're not going to be involved in the hundreds. You're going to be involved in one event only, and you can put all your eggs in that basket. There's no room for manoeuvre with that.
I think it must be quite lonely in a way. I think, that, and I also think the sort of training that someone like Ben probably does, which will be a hell of a lot of time in the gym, probably slightly less time in the pool, but when the time that he's doing in the pool is on, such specific aspects of his stroke and his speed and all that sort of thing. I think there's quite a lot in there that sets you apart. And, I think you probably have to be very focused and single-minded in a way that you might not have to. If you're involved in a lot of events and involved in relays, and I think it must be quite a hard place to be in.
And I also noticed you see that on the introductions on pool deck, and there's everybody doing kind of strange shapes and jumping up and down and big smiles. Ben actually doesn't do anything at all on his thing in the back. It's just basically him folding his arms or whatever it was, because that's the kind of person he is. He's not showy. He doesn't have that kind of pizzazz about him. He's there to swim, and that's what he does.
You talk about him, having a singular focus on one event, though. He did swim the 50 fly this week, which he didn't last year. So I wonder whether that's something that, obviously they don't have the option of that at the Olympics, but I wonder if that was a change that maybe, thought would help.
He's going to go beyond Paris anyway.
Yeah. So, it's kind of, he will only be on one in Paris, but he did that last year, didn't he, at all three? I'm not sure he swam the 50 fly at all last year, but regardless, great result in that 50 final for Ben.
He did the Commonwealths, didn't he?
Yes, you could be right. Yeah, you could be right. Anyway, let's move on, because in our preview podcast, when we were making our little predictions, Katie said that she didn't see any medals coming from the female side of the team. And I have to say, I was kind of sympathetic to that viewpoint, but we were all delighted that we were wrong.
So pleased to be wrong.
Lauren Cox in the 50-metre backstroke put together, we talked about it on the halfway, that she technically looked great in her semi-final. She did it again in the final, went even faster, and maintained that third place, Katie, to come home with a bronze on her World Championships debut. You can't take that away from her now. That's a great introduction to the world level.
Yeah, amazing. And I, as a spectator, I love seeing people look pleased when they win a medal, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone look anywhere near as pleased as Lauren Cox. So that was brilliant. No, amazing. She dropped, I don't know how much time she dropped. It was a huge amount off her previous best, but she won 100th off the British record. Absolutely incredible performance. Seeing her celebrating with Ian Hume, who I think is her coach at Loughborough. Absolutely amazing. So I'm really, really hoping she did some great 100 backs. She's now dipped under the minute, quite a few times, and did again in one of the relays. So I am looking forward to seeing how that translates, and hopefully we'll see her on the team for Paris next year.
Yeah, 0.4-ish. I think she took off her PB over 50 metres backstroke during the week. So, a very good improvement across the competition. And as you say, some pretty solid 100 backs in there as well, securing her place as a sub-60 swimmer, which is really great to see. Let's move on. Let's pick up on some British relays. Women's 4x2, which is one that we haven't seen very often internationally. It's one that always seems to have fallen the wrong side of the selectors' guillotine when they've been putting their teams together. But Bob, this time they did pretty well. They were fourth in that final, and for a long period it looked like they might be able to get on the podium. It was just the Chinese a bit too strong at the end, but it's a big step forward for that team.
Yeah, a lot of promise. We only have to go back to the times where Katie was swimming, and our 4x2 women were very strong. So we went through a bit of downturn after that, and we've not done too much in that department, but encouraging, very encouraging. If I'd looked through the list of events at the beginning of the week, I would not have had them down pushing for a medal, but they were comfortably made the final, comfortably made the top four. So there's obviously room for manoeuvre and plenty of possibilities and ambition for next year with that.
Well, they've almost certainly, Katie, secured an Olympic spot for that team, finishing fourth this year. Obviously, it's not confirmed until after the Doha World Championships in February. But you'd like to think that British swimming, assuming whoever is in the trials makes it through what will inevitably be a very tough selection standard, you'd like to think that the British swimming will now actually give them the chance in Paris.
I really think that they should. I mean, that's definitely the strongest quartet we've seen in ages. And it's not one of those relays that's carried by one swimmer. They're all really, really good 200 freestylers. And, Freya Colbert's dropped a huge amount of time this year in that event, and I think is only getting better every time she swims. So, you look at that, you look at our fourth place finish, I really think there's a chance there. There's a chance of a medal next year. If there's a little bit more focus on that relay, it's not one that's in the bag, but I really, really thought for a while there we were going to get on that podium, and I think Freya Anderson was a little bit excited on that final leg, but it was within touching distance, and I think if we were if all four were able to put together the best race and kind of it's very, very difficult in a race like that to keep your head and swim the event the way that you normally would and kind of know how fast you're going. But if we can, I don't know, somehow practice it a little bit more. It's a very hard race to practice because it doesn't happen very often. You don't get to do it very often, and we do it even less because we don't often enter a team. I really think that's something that we could look at as a focus event and as a real medal chance.
Well, Freya Colbert indeed set her personal best on the lead-off 156.16, so she's stepping forward every time she swims at the moment. She PB'd in the 400 IM on the last day as well, obviously a little way away from the podium because that was a super fast final, but she's improving. So, that's only going to help that team, and hopefully they will, as I say, get the opportunity to swim it in Paris next year. Let's look now at the medley relays. The women, unfortunately, just shy of the final, finished in 9th in the heats, so didn't get the chance to come back. The men, playing with fire as well, finished 8th, Bob. But they perhaps against our expectations, actually got themselves right in the mix for the medals, and it could so easily have gone the other way.
And let's say credit to Ollie Morgan, second after the backstroke leg he was. Another personal best for him, setting personal bests all over the place. We talk about Matt Richards doing it this week. He's done it as well. Every time he's been in the pool, I think this week he set a new personal best. So hopefully that's what we needed. That's what we've now discovered as our utopia going forward on the backstroke leg anyway. We now have a lead off because Luke was always kind of a reluctant lead off. I think on the medley, he'd always do it for the team, but he's not 100 backstroke, as we know. 200 is his specialty. Whereas I think Ollie's proved that hopefully he'll be the answer going forward and say second at the turn, going off into the breaststroke. Oh, it was brilliant.
And Casey, I think we saw the power of the relay team, lifting people up with James Wilby. He's not had the week he would have wanted. He's not looked anything like himself. And here we are on the final day of the meet. He goes in and drops a 58.4 split, which is, I think, a second or so faster than anything he'd managed all week. And that was critical to kind of getting us in the mix, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could have been lagging behind on that at that halfway point, and he really, really picked himself up. And it's been an odd week for him. We didn't see him in the 200, which again is another thing I don't really understand. But I think I've said it before. I'm always really impressed when people can pick themselves up for the team. I just think it's a special thing that not everyone can do. So amazing to see him doing that. There's a lot of pressure on that breaststroke spot, isn't there? Because we're so used to having our secret weapon, or not very secret weapon, deployed in the form of Adam Peaty. But it's big shoes to fill. But he really, really stepped up today.
It is a worry going forward, though, isn't it? Because let's say Adam comes back, and hopefully he does for Paris. That's great. But probably he's not going to go beyond Paris. James is probably not going to go beyond Paris. Where do we find a breaststroker from? Is there anybody in the making? Is there anybody in the offing? Is there anybody likely to break through? Or are we going to go through a bit of a downturn here in a period where we actually don't have anybody of that note on the breaststroke anymore?
Well, I mean, obviously British Swimming are putting their faith in Greg Butler. They took him to Fukuoka, but he swam the 200. He's perhaps more suited to the longer event. Archie Goodburn, the Scot, he was very impressive in the 50 at trials. Archie's
been very good at junior level, but he hasn't made that transition to senior level yet.
So I think maybe, there's a few people bubbling under, but you're right, we haven't yet got the obvious successor. So hopefully someone will put their hand up, because that team, has been a regular source of medals for Britain over the last however many years, and it would be good to someone to get that.
We got a replacement for Jimmy with Jacob, for example. So that there's a straight replacement on the butterfly, and now we got a replacement for Luke on the backstroke. But the breaststroke's so key to what we've done, and there's a big difference between us getting a medal and not getting a medal. So we need to magic somebody out of thin air, or find somebody who's going to make that improvement in the next 18 months.
Well, you see the problem really, I guess, on the women's side. We talked about it before, about our fly problem. We've had a fly problem for probably since, I don't know, is it fair to say we've had a fly problem since Gemma Lowe retired?
Maybe Siobhan.
Yeah, but Siobhan's always had so many things to do, hasn't she? If she's doing the 100 fly, she's kind of taking one for the team a bit, because her focus was largely elsewhere. But the gap, I guess, you see the impact it can have on those medley relays, and it's no one's fault. But it's tough, and it actually puts those swimmers in a really tough position. It's a lot of pressure on someone.
Yeah, well, so if relays are so key, and they are so key from British swimming point of view, should we not be doing something a bit more specific about that to make sure that we do get that resolved, not just let it fester? So in 18 months, where's our butterfly swim? Where's our breaststroke swim going to come from? So that's what we should be targeting now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're still doing specific, like stroke-specific camps, and I'm sure they're trying to get someone through, but it's the same. I don't think we've just been desperately waiting for a backstroker. I think we've been trying to look for one, for example, rather than sort of forcing Luke into that position when he's not really a 100 backstroker. But we're lucky that Ollie Morgan stepped up and has proven himself to be that guy.
Yeah, but shouldn't be luck, should it?
Well, yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, you can't conjure someone up.
We've got all these centres now with loads of swimmers. And we can't find a backstroke, or we can't find a butterfly swim, or we can't find a breaststroke.
But isn't the problem with the centres that's where you go when you're good? Do you know what I mean? Rather than you don't go there because you've got early potential and you think you could fill that spot. You go there because you've shown that you can do, that you're already international caliber, and you kind of get diverted there. It's an earlier thing, isn't it? I guess maybe age group nationals is the place where you start siphoning people off, but then there's the other side of it, I suppose, is that historically we've taken people to centres far too early and sort of taken them away from a good support network at home and possibly school and all that sort of thing, and that hasn't worked either. So it's a really fine line.
But my point is, if we're making this big thing about relays are so key and they're so important, and we tend to be very good at them, then the resources should be being put into that to go, right, okay, we've got an element here that's not working, or we don't have at all. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. And it seems to be we're waiting till, oh God, Adam's retired. What do we do now? We should be thinking about that now.
I'm sure they are thinking about it, but I mean, there's a difference between thinking about it and actually, having an end product. And
like long distance swimmers.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Been thinking about that for 10 years.
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes, but critical that if we're going to be successful, that there is a succession plan in place for that. But signing off on the British performance on the relays, obviously putting the bookend onto the British performance this week was Matt Richards, who signed off with the way he'd started the week with another 46-point relay split, just to remind us all what a great week he'd had. So it was nice for him to finish that way, even if it didn't turn up with the medal in the end. Let's Let's look at a couple of other highlights from the meet. We spoke about the winning margin that Cam McAvoy had in the 50 Sarah Sjostrom, Katie, had almost the same large winning margin in the women's. I think 0.48 or something she was ahead. I mean, she set a world record in the 53 in the semi-final, second fastest time ever in the final. She set the first world record 10 minutes after winning the 50 fly for the 9,000th time in a row. She's just incredible, isn't she?
She is amazing, and I actually really like that she swam relays. She swam hundreds in the relays, but she didn't swim any individual hundreds. But every time she swam, her times were insane. And she's just doing what she enjoys now, I think. She's just doing 50s because she likes training for them, because she likes racing them. She potentially doesn't like training for and racing hundreds, but she could still just, step onto the podium every time she did one of them if she decided that was what she was going to race. She just looks like she's having a great time, and she's doing great times. And she promised her coach a world record for his birthday, which she delivered. I mean, she's just insane, and I can't believe how long she's been around. She's not old, and she won her first world championship in 2009. I mean, she's just incredible. I don't think we'll see another Sarah Sjostrom for a while.
What about the Ruta comeback? Is it complete? I think it probably is. She's managed to get 2 world records in the space of 2 days, and 2 big checks for that as well.
Yeah, very lucrative minutes of swimming, wasn't it? Yeah.
She doesn't look like she's having quite as good a time as Sarah Sjostrom, but no, it's a pretty incredible comeback. She actually retired, didn't she? She stepped away from the sport. She really wasn't having a good time. I know there was a few other issues mixed up in that, but we're a long way past her coming out of nowhere in 2012 and winning Olympic gold. She looks the favourite to do it next year, which would be pretty amazing.
And I still think of her as part of us because she was trained at Plymouth for so long with John. So, obviously he got her to that first Olympic gold. I know she's not been at that programme for a while now, but I still kind of think there's a touch of Britain in her.
Yeah, well, we'll claim a 8th of the gold medal or something. How about that? Because it's a few years since she was training Britain. But no, she was very good as well. Now, Bob, we'd spoken in the preview podcast about the 1500. We spoke to Kev Renshaw about the 1500 earlier this year, and he was telling us it's a golden age for distance swimming. Now you tried to shoe on Ahmed Hafnoui into our conversation halfway through, but you can talk about him now because he had a fantastic swim today to take that 1500. It was an epic race with Bobby Fink. Wasn't
it exceptional? And the thing was, you really had no idea which way it was going to go until really the last touch, because the American was there, Bobby Fink was there all the way through, Hafnoui, and you're going, right, okay, so where does this meet? We've got they're both, one's won the 800, one's the 400. Where's this going to go? And the sad bit for me was that Dan Whiffen wasn't able to get in the mix at the end, because I thought for a long time he was going to be there, and he still did an exceptional time, not as good as he had done earlier in the year, but nonetheless it was a fantastic race. And for a 1500 meters race to be won by that margin, right on the touch, was exceptional, and all the things I expected it to be. What let it down a little bit, I suppose, overall, was the fact there was no Paltrinieri, which was a big surprise, and of course no Florian Velbrock either. So we missed 2 of the key men. So that race could even have been better, I think, had Paltrinieri been on form. But he went home midway through the week because he just wasn't swimming that well.
I don't know whether those guys who are more, endurance oriented have got to rethink how they approach that race. I mean, we saw Sam Short, Katie, go off like an absolute scalded rabbit for the first however long. You and I were messaging, fearing for his safety, given how long he had to go and how fast he was going. But no, the race has really changed, hasn't it? There's no kind of plodding along. I say plodding's the wrong word, but grinding out 59 point. You've got to be able to swim faster than that now.
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing if I could call a priest in for Sam Short for possibly the last 1,000 meters, but I was proven wrong. He's an interesting guy. I don't know that I listened to an interview with him the other day, and I don't think I've ever listened to anyone so confident in my life, but confident in the work that he's put in, and turns out he knew himself far better than I knew anything about 1500 today. But it's much more exciting when it's a race. Like, there were quite a few years where that was a very I found it a very dull event to watch, because it was sort of it was a bit like a 5,000 meters on the track where everyone's just sort of sticking with each other, and then there might be a sprint on the last 50. But seeing people getting down to that world record time, and not just one person out on their own. There's a load of guys that can be in the race, particularly if we've got Paltrineri back. So it's become a really exciting one to watch. And always good when you don't have to call a priest.
Unlike the women's.
Oh well, but it's like I don't find it that boring, because Ledecky's just...
It's not a race, though, is it?
But because you've got someone who is so good, I don't mind.
Oh, she's brilliant, but the fact is, it's going to be like that before we start.
Yeah, I mean, it was more interesting. Like we knew who was going to win. Like, but the women's 800 was actually a pretty good race after first. It was fast.
Yes.
That was more interesting than it had been from that perspective, because it's the first time we haven't just seen Ledecky, Titmus, somebody else. Titmus actually wasn't in second for the first time in ages, but it's
and I'm not downplaying how brilliant she is either. I'm not downplaying that, but I'm just saying as a spectacle now, beyond 400 meters, the 8 and the 15, you go, well, she's going to win it. How big is the margin going to be? How far in front will she be? It's got to that stage where she is, and has been for so long, so much better than everybody else, that it's kind of, okay, well, we know who's going to win it, who's second and third, and that kind of not devalues the race for me, but doesn't make it as exciting.
I think something that I'm finding with the Australian women's 100 freestylers, all of the women who are really excelling in the 400 free, Ledecky in the distance events, people are showing us what is possible, how fast it is possible to go, and that is moving things on. Suddenly we have 4 women under 4 minutes. Is it 4? Like 4 current women under 4 minutes in the 400 free, which is absolutely insane. Like that didn't even happen until relatively recently, one person. And I think, although it's boring to have someone who's so dominant in a way, if it's going to move the sport on as a whole, if it's going to move an event on, then I'm up for it.
I'd love to see Ledecky do open water.
I think she'd be great.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd love to see her do it.
I think she would be very, very, very good at it. I think you're right. I mean, she was, let's give her the props she deserves, because that was a 6th consecutive 800 free time.
She's amazing. Brilliant. She's the greatest female swimmer of all time. There cannot be any question about that, can there? No?
At the moment, I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
I think there are others. There are some with potential now to take the crown, but no one's anywhere near at the moment.
Yeah, no, she was consistently excellent, as you've come to expect from her. She was one of the high points, in fact, for the US team, which didn't have the best of weeks. So let's deal with that issue now, because despite Australia topping the medal table on gold medals and being absolutely brilliant all week, the World Aquatics System, which gives points for 16 16th place upwards, and then top 8 in relays, which kind of rewards having a big team rather than necessarily having the best team, put the USA at the top of the team trophy, Bob, which just doesn't feel right, does it?
Absolutely ludicrous. On any method that we'd come up with, and any method that most people in aquatics would come up with, Australia were far and away the best team out there by a country mile. The USA, in terms of medals, you saw that NBC halfway through the week switched it around, so it was medal count and not golds that they were putting up on their medal table, kind of conceding that Australia were the best team in the week, and they were the best team in the week by quite some way. But it's an interesting point to make, and an interesting point that's been made by Bob Bowman, of all people, and he knows more than most. He says, don't look at what America does a year before the Olympics, because very often, the year before the Olympics, they're not actually that good. The World Championship leading into Olympic Games, sometimes they have a bit of a drop-off. Suddenly, 12 months later, they'll have a big upsurge and upturn, and he reckons it'll happen that way again this time.
I think, and I could be wrong, that generally the year before the Olympics, they have a really odd thing in the US where they've actually chosen their World Championships team a year previously. They choose it really, really early. And they haven't done it this year because I think they do something very odd like that, and then you get all these people coming through for Olympic year who you've never heard of and making it onto the team because they didn't have a chance to make the team the previous summer. So I think that's been true in previous years, what he said, don't judge them by the World Championships before. I think this year is probably a bit more indicative than the year before the Olympics normally is for the US. I mean, there are very few countries that have the luxury of being able to pick their team from a first two to the finish at trials. Most countries set standards that are more tricky than that, or we simply they don't have the depth to get two people having the A time in every event, so they don't have a full team. So I don't think there would be many countries that would have the opportunity to score as many points as the US scored this week. I would just look at the performances, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Australia were the team of the week. They were just incredible, and they deserved that award. And I know it's just the way that the system is, but for me, 100% Australia team of the week.
Don't forget Dressel's back next year. That'll change a lot.
But it'll certainly help.
He's got a big year coming up. He's going to be having a child, and I think that'll be a challenge. So I hope he's back, because I like him a lot. I think he's a great guy, and I think he's good for swimming. But who knows if swimming's the thing that's going to make him happy. So we'll just see how that goes.
Well, I think we're unanimous that Australia were our team of the meet. So, USA get the trophy, but USA get the trophy, but Australia get our award for team of the meet.
That'll mean a lot, I think.
It will, yeah. I can imagine that Kyle Chalmers will put that on his CV going forward. Right.
I wake up singing Advanced Australia Fair now as well.
Well, we heard it a lot, didn't we? And I think that's indicative of the meet. Right, before we wrap up, I did ask for some questions for us. If anyone wanted to ask us any questions, and a few came in that I thought we could have a go at. So let's pick up three. First one from Braden Keith, who's the editor-in-chief of SwimSwam. So if this appears on SwimSwam next week, you'll know why. But he wanted to ask us, and I'll get this right, what we thought about Abby Wood and her future, because she obviously came roaring up during the ISL a couple of years ago, and for whatever reason she just looks a little bit flat at the moment. And Katie, I'm going to start with you on this one, because we're massive fans of Abby. I think she's brilliant. She didn't get to do the 200 IM this week, maybe swimming some off events, but she was really good in the medley relay. So the 4x2. What are your thoughts?
It's quite odd to say that somebody who's a world-class swimmer is swimming some off events at World Championships, isn't it? And I think that kind of seems to have been a little bit of a theme of the GB team this week. Maybe not swimming off events, maybe just not swimming on events. It's quite difficult to know where she is, because we've only seen her swim 200 freestyle and 100 freestyle in relays this week. I don't know if there's anything more going on other than managing workload for the purposes of qualifying relays. I don't know if there's an injury there, because we're used to seeing her doing 200 IM, we're used to seeing her doing 200 breaststroke, which she hasn't touched this year. It's difficult to know, but we have seen her put together a sub 210 200 IM this year, which by any standards is a really, really competitive time. It's a real shame that she didn't get to swim that here, because she would have made the final. And I think she's someone that we've seen in the past that really seems to build in confidence. When she's having a good year, you can sort of see it in everything that she does, and she just gets better and better and better. And it feels a little bit like her wings have been clipped a bit this year, and she hasn't had the chance to get that confidence going and then show us what she can do. So in terms of what do I think about her future, I've got literally no idea. She did great 200 free, but she's not a 200 freestyler. She's a very good 200 freestyler, but she's not a 200 freestyler. So that's positive, but can we let her swim her best events, please? That's what I would say.
Bob, it'd be great to see her, back in the 200M for Paris.
She'll be fine next year. I have no doubt about that. And I'd say her workload or lack of it this week this past week is what concerns me, because again, you're absolutely right. I'd love to see what she did on the 200 IM. It's her best event, but she's a versatile swimmer who can do a range of things, and I would love to have seen her do a range of things, and for whatever reason she wasn't able to do a range of things. So I think when the handbrake's taken off, she gets a chance to do that next year. I think we'll see the true Abby Wood in 2024.
We'd love to see that. So let's hope that that this is a temporary phase, and then she's back fully firing, ready for Paris next year. Next question then from Hannah Secker. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. She came to us on Twitter. Now, we spoke about the Doha World Championships in our halfway podcast. Obviously, we now expect the men's 4x1 to go there because they need to qualify themselves for Paris. We think they probably would have won a medal this time, so that they'll probably make sure that they can qualify that in Doha next time. Hannah wants to know if we think that British swimming might give the opportunity to some up and coming swimmers as a sort of development championship. Bob, what do you think as for that as an idea?
Well, I think they should, but I'd like to see more going to the World Junior Championships in September. So I think that's the kind of outlet or the meeting that I'd like to see more of them go to, give them that experience, rather than put them into a World Championship situation. Give them a junior opportunity and see where they go from there.
Katie, what about those people in the middle, too old for juniors, the kind of people who are going to European under-23s this summer, who might be on the cusp of making the Olympic team if they can jump forward? Do you think Doha will be an opportunity for them, or do you think that's too disruptive to their chances of maybe making a breakthrough for Paris?
I think that the organisers will probably take a very careful look at where the cutoff is currently in terms of top 16 and make the call on how much of a risk they can take on that basis. I think it's a hell of a responsibility to send people, go and qualify us a team for the Olympics. Perhaps a team that might not have the confidence to do that, have never swum together before. I would have thought it would be a mixture of names that we know and perhaps a few that we don't, or they'll just go all in and send their top 4 or 4 out of their top 5 to get the job done. I don't think it's something they'll take a chance with, given that, I suppose we could say there's potentially an Olympic gold in the mix, at risk here.
Trials in March next year?
They'll be March, April, won't they?
Yeah, so it's going to be about 4 weeks out from trials.
But what about? I mean, Katie, that's entirely fair for the relay. They won't take chances. But what about the opportunity to send people, for things other than the relays? Maybe is there a chance for some people who don't normally get the chance to compete at that level, to get a go? Or do you think British swimming will just put the shutters down on that, say that we're sending that relay and that's it?
I think the latter, because is there any point in sending an untapered team to a World Championships? Not really. Is anyone going to want to taper 4 weeks out of trials? Absolutely not. I mean, that would be where I think they'd land. I suppose, I just have no idea what those championships are going to look like. Are you going to send a possible second-tier team, if there's a chance of a possible second-tier team getting medals at a World Championships, even though they're perhaps not going to have the worth that they would have at a normal World Championships? I don't know if that's a confidence builder or not. Everyone's going to kind of know what it is. I don't personally think it's a great use of funding resources so close to Olympic trials, but I'm not in charge, and I'm sure lots of people will disagree. Okay,
well, we will see what they do, but I think it's quite likely, I agree, that just that men's 4x1 will go. But let's see. We'll obviously wait for the policy with interest. Right, one final question, which should be a bit of a good debate. Kate Sharman asked, British-wise, who did we think had the best international debut? Now, I've got 2 names, and I'm not going to mention either of them because I'm going to see, Bob, who you thought the best British debutante was in Fukuoka.
Ollie Morgan.
Yeah, he was one of my 2. Katie?
I would have gone with Ollie Morgan as well. I can't think of who else was a debutante. Yeah, I think Ollie Morgan.
Yeah, I was putting Lauren Cox into that argument as well, because I can't remember if she went to Europeans last year or not, but certainly a debut at the world level. Yeah,
I had in my head that she did, but I'm not sure. Yes, definitely first World Championships, which is a whole other level, isn't it?
Yeah. But, I think I would have just slightly veered towards Ollie just because he was so consistent through the week and improved through the rounds. But Lauren, close second, at least on the World Championship debutante scale, because she did pick up a medal. Even if it, a 15 non-Olympic event, doesn't matter. It was a great swim from her. So well done to both of them. So I think we'll give it to Ollie by the finest of margins. There we go. All right. I think that's time to pull this podcast to a conclusion. Great speaking to you both, but we've got a bit of a break now, obviously, in terms of international competition, but excited for Paris off the back of that, Bob?
Yes, very. Very, very. Interesting to see what happens at trials. We've just seen a young lady of 14 go in the mid-8s for the 800 metres as well, freestyle. So I'm very excited by that. See young Blotzich go forward and see what she can do. Obviously not for Paris, so I'd love to see her there. I think it's going to be at LA before we get to see her in GB colours fully.
And Katie, withdrawal symptoms to deal with, but it's been exciting.
Yeah, it's been great. I think all the sports stopping at once, which is quite annoying because we've had a really good run of tennis and golf and all kinds of stuff going on. But I'll miss it. But if we can find some more events, that'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you very much to both of you. It's been, as I say, great chatting about these World Championships. They've been very exciting for GB. And as we say, Britain's equal second best performance at a World Swimming Championships. So a very creditable outcome for the team that went to Fukuoka. The podcast will be back at some point in the future. I wouldn't want to put a time on it because who knows what will happen. But keep your eyes on my socials and you'll see when one lands on your podcast player. If you do want to get in contact in the meantime, it's at Poolboy on Twitter or X as it is now, or at Poolboy UK on Instagram, poolboy.co.uk/contact. Send me an email. And if you want to check out any of the stats and things that I've been keeping an eye on this week, you can find them at poolboy.co.uk/records for the British records, and poolboy.co.uk/relays for relay splits. But until the podcast is back with you, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Poolboy Podcast. For more episodes, visit www.poolboy.co.uk/podcast.